Hello everyone, I'm Akira. I grew up in Japan and currently work in Europe. As I have worked in Japanese companies and foreign companies in Europe, I can describe the difference between the Japanese companies and working in European companies. So today I would like to talk about punctuality in Japan. When asked about the Japanese people, what would be the first thing to cross your mind? Perhaps you would imagine pride, very hard work, punctuality, and so on. What you would imagine about Japanese people may hit some points anyway. Yes, about punctuality, the Japanese people are extremely punctual. However, I would like to add some points. Firstly, for Japanese people, punctuality differs depending on the situation. Japanese people are very punctual when it's work and school. On the other hand, they are pretty loose in private life. I remember one of my friends from Poland complained that Japanese people don't come to the promised time in private life. Secondly, Japanese people are punctual at the start time, but the end time is never respected to be punctual. In the 80s of the bubble economy era in Japan, they were often criticized by local people that the lights at the Japanese company's office were always on until midnight in the United States. Wherever they go, as long as Japanese people are in Japanese companies, they bring the Japanese mindset and the business culture. As I am Japanese and grew up in Japan, I personally believe the punctuality is good. On the other hand, Japanese people never paid attention to what time they finish. When I was a child, my dad used to leave home at 7:30 in the morning and came back to home at 11 p.m. He literally didn't have any time for the family on weekdays. It took 2 decades how great my dad was, how much he put energy for the family. I don't think I can be as a hard worker as my dad. So, questions come up when I talk about national characteristics. Where are the national characteristics from? Does it exist even before nation states were formed, such as 2000 years ago? Is it something from genes? Or does it construct by society? Interestingly, the origin of Japanese people's punctuality can be found in history and society. In the first place, Japanese people are not conscious of the notion of time. It's an incredible phenomenon that how humans could teach the universal notion of time. For example, Japan and Israel have their own era name, but they also adopt AD and Greenwich Mean Time. So the points are time and modernity, and more precisely, school and trains. Until the Edo era, which was 1867, Japan used Teiji-ho, Seiko, which is a Japanese watch company, explained the method. The irregular time rule divided the day into 6 equal parts based on the dawn and dusk as a standard and called the range as a moment. Even during the day, the range of time between the day and the night is different, and it also depends on the season. So it was a complicated time system that constantly changed in range. In the end of Edo era, Dutch commander William Hysen van Kattendijk came to Japan from 1857 to 1859. He trained Japanese officers about modern navy education during his stay. After he went back to the Netherlands, he published his notes as a book, the diary during his stay in Japan. In the book, he describes characteristics of Japanese people. He says that Japanese sense of time is shocking. For example, one day he ordered timbers, but it was never delivered. He concludes that Japanese people are polite and humble, but they are disappointed in various ways. And I even think that it will be leaving here without doing half of my duties at this point. This kind of view was common for the foreigners at the end of Edo era and the beginning of the Meiji era. You can see that the Japanese people's characteristics were completely opposite from now. However, the Meiji government drastically changed the Japanese society. The Meiji government rapidly modernized Japan as a nation state like European nation states. Firstly, the Meiji government introduced a modern educational system from the early Meiji period, and that was the first universal education system in Japan. Of course, it took years to be adopted by the majority of people because almost the Japanese population was farmers and they needed laborers for the farming. However, the modern universal education system set and fixed the time of being in school. This means that kids, students, and teachers had to come to school on time. The modern education system created a sense of fixed and common time for Japanese people. Secondly, the Meiji government introduced steam trains in 1872. Steam trains were not flexible for time because a steam train required a train and a railroad track. And since there were multiple steam trains on the railroad, it was necessary to have an accurate periodical operation on time. Accurate periodical time would not be suddenly given to the inaccurate Japanese people. This is a comment about Japanese trains 100 years ago. Recently, private railway trains misplace their departure and arrival times every time. It's rare to arrive and depart on time. Late arrival is almost normal and should be the first duty of time alignment. It's boldly doubtful to regard the late arrival as a normal thing to the stationer himself. In a certain railroad, it says that it has not arrived and departure almost at all times during the year. However, the railway network had been developed and expanded. Steam trains needed further accurate operation time to go from Tokyo to another. Due to the effort of the government and railroad companies, on-time train operations were already implemented since the 1930s. Since the train had on-time operations, Japanese people also needed to follow on time. Interestingly enough, Japanese people controlled the technology at first, but from some point, Japanese people were required to follow and be controlled by technologies. So, in conclusion, I can proudly say that Japanese people are punctual. Since many Japanese companies are very aware of time, it can be said that Japanese people's punctuality is proved as one of the Japanese national characteristics. However, I would like to say that this is not from genes. You can find evidence of different sense of time in history. Through 150 years of history, Japanese society successfully shaped the sense of time as punctual. In other words, punctuality doesn't have any promise in the next 150 years. This could also be said about the other countries. Thank you for listening.